And now, realnewsrealaction.com, the radio show, paid for by Jim Condit Jr. for Congress.
Hello, everybody. Whenever I hear that deep baritone voice, I always am afraid I'm going to sound like Mickey Mouse for the whole hour. Those announcers got such nice, deep voices. This is Jim Condit Jr., Jim Condit Jr. for Congress.com, Jim Condit Jr. for Congress. Our website, we tried to make finally easy to remember. It's jimforamerica.com, where we got a lifetime of documentation on all kinds of subjects. Just about everything I say in this hour would get Sean Hannity and Rush Limbaugh fired within a week. They would find some way to get rid of them within a week. That's why I buy time, according to the reasonable access law. This is not WLW or WKRC or iHeart wanting this to be on necessarily. It's that I, as a federal candidate, through the reasonable access law, have the right, and my supporters have the right to buy time and get treated like any other business. It did in the last 60 days of an election. So there's only one issue in this campaign, the midterm 2018 congressional campaigns, and that is, are we going to get a fair count, or are we going to have massive computer fraud to put the Democrats into charge of Congress, at which point they will impeach Trump and bring everything that he's trying to do to a screeching halt. Now, we're going to have a frank analysis of the Trump administration on this call, on this show. Things are not going well in the Mideast and on other foreign policies because he's surrounded by people that are going with the old deep state shadow government program, one of which is John Bolton. But why he picks people like John Bolton and Nikki Haley, who was a never-Trumper, that's one thing that's very disturbing. But we're going to have a frank analysis. But still, Trump is trying to do a lot of things that what Sean Hannity has made popular called the deep state. And I do appreciate what Rush and Sean Hannity are doing. I listen to them, I laugh at them, I appreciate what they're doing. Sean Hannity has already done the case. All Jeff Sessions would have to do if he wasn't compromised is to start looking at Sean Hannity's shows and prosecuting, but he won't do it because the deep state obviously has him compromised. He acts like he's Obama's attorney general, not Trump's. So at any rate, that's the only issue. Now we're going to be covering a lot of other things. We're on for the next 9 weeks. So this is September 9th. We're on every Sunday from now till November 2nd, okay? And we're going to do all kinds of things. One show, we will devote probably the whole show to Charlottesville, because the evil deep state is trying to make Charlottesville and trying to march for keeping up the statues, the historical statues of significance to this country, like Robert E. Lee. Anybody that wants those statues to stay up and be torn down, they want to equate you with a racist who likes to kill people. So we take on the most difficult issues. Charlottesville is one of them. And we'll have on, at some point, Rick Borden, who's the father of Dan Borden, who's a kid from Mason, young man from Mason High School, white guy from Mason High School, who's 19 or 20 now, and has been in jail for 1 year for throwing a punch in defense of another person in Charlottesville, even though the police made sure that the Antifa, Black Lives Matter people clashed with the people marching. The police made sure of that. They did not keep them apart. There were a few punches thrown, and Dan Borden threw one in this defense of an old guy who was hit by a Black Lives Matter guy named Harris. I can't remember his first name right now. But DeAndre Harris, I think. And DeAndre Harris has spent no days in jail when he threw for the first punch. And Dan Borden is now over a year in jail, and they're still going to sentence him. So we're going to do a whole show on that. May have an international internet commentator who is running for mayor in Toronto, Faith Goldie. May have her on, because she was there, reported what happened, and got fired the same week for reporting what actually happened in Charlottesville. So we're going to do a show on that. I'm going to do at least a half a show, or 20 minutes of a show, on something that is not politics in a way. I have one of my beloved cousins. I'm the oldest of 11 children. I'm the oldest child of 11 children. I have 60 nieces and nephews, and We also have a bunch of cousins, and one of my beloved cousins was suddenly hit with cancer recently and had to just have an operation, and an organist. I play the organ at church for the last 51 years. I can't sing, but I play the organ at low mass for the last 51 years at one of the churches locally, just for the people when there's no choir. And one of the organists that at one time was at our church, who's a young man with about 6 or 7 or 8 kids, has just been struck with cancer, and he's in real trouble, as I understand. So I'm going to do 20 minutes on what to do to try to prevent yourself and your friends and your neighbors and your relatives from getting cancer. There's some things that are known that you can do, which basically comes to an alkaline diet. So we'll cover that because that's very important for people to know. And I'm not saying I'm against chemo. I'm not against modern pharmaceuticals. I take some of them myself. As Suzanne Summers says, I don't want to live in a world without modern pharmaceuticals. But the things you can do in your diet every day, there's things you can do to ward off that you're going to suddenly get this cancer diagnosis, which means your body has gone too acid from eating too many acid-producing foods. Which I love all the acid-producing foods like you do, hamburgers, bread, dessert, chocolate, but everything just about we love except vegetables and vegetable juice and a few other things are acid-producing. So we need to have a reasonable amount of alkaline foods in our diet. So you can get like Google David Wolfe, who's a nutritionist, or Suzanne Summers. Actually, she ended up to be one of the big voices for sanity on giving people things they can do to prevent getting cancer. So let's talk about briefly why we are in such danger of the deep state. By the way, the first time Sean Hannity used the term deep state, which was about a year ago, sometime in 2016, maybe a little longer, he played it on the air a few weeks ago. And he played it, and here's what he said the first time. He said, "The shadow government, the deep state." Now, since then, he's only been using the deep state. So maybe somebody waved him away from that, even though I like the term shadow government better because it gives a better idea what's happening. Deep state gives the impression there's just a few Obama holdovers that are in the Trump administration causing trouble. It's much, much more than that. Obama himself was just a pathetic puppet. So was W. Bush. So was Clinton. So is Hillary Clinton, and Trump has turned to be an outlier. He comes out of the deep state, you might say. He comes out of the establishment, no question about it. But he, like the Kennedys, and Nixon, is doing some things they don't like, and that's why you have on MSNBC and CNN, they are crying 24 hours a day for his impeachment. Apparently, everything Trump does is an impeachable offense. So anyway, so a lot of the shadow government doesn't like it. Now, here's what Rush Limbaugh and Sean Hannity, or any of them, could get fired within a week for saying. What is the deep state? Nobody's born deep state, okay? The deep state is a combination of the Netanyahu Likud party Jewish faction worldwide. That is not all Jews. Let's not be ridiculous. It is a small, several thousand people, maybe 10,000 people at the top of the world who cooperate with the Netanyahu ADL, AIPAC, that's American Israeli Political Action Committee, organized Jewish crime syndicate. And that's what they are. They make the Italian mafia look like pikers. The crime syndicate, the organized Jewish lobby. Okay, that's one faction of our deep state, or shadow government. The other faction is the Anglo-Freemasonic faction, and again, not all Freemasons. The guys at the local level don't, they probably don't understand any of this. Although they shouldn't be taking those horrible oaths that everybody has to take when you join Freemasonry. But the top of the secret societies, like Skull and Bones, the Bilderbergers, the top of Freemasonry, Anglo-Freemasonry is the other half of the deep state, and that's the Clintons, the Bushes, Comey has been co-opted into it somewhere along the line. The super criminal and traitor Robert Mueller, who's running the witch hunt against Trump, is become part of that. So those are your two factions of the deep state. Anybody that says that the organized Jewish lobby does not have control of Congress is in a fairy tale land. Paul Ryan and Mitch McConnell and Nancy Pelosi don't go to the little boy and little girl's room without asking permission from the American Israeli Public Affairs Committee, what's called American Israeli Public Affairs Committee, AIPAC. In a not too well publicized meeting at AIPAC, you had 75 senators and like over 100 congressmen come to pay homage. So no, anyone that says that is not the case is in fairy tale land. Pat Buchanan, the great Jim Trafficant, who was in this studio 4 years ago with me for his last major show on major AM network because they wouldn't have him on anymore, he fingered that this is what's happening. And you can go to YouTube and find a video, 6-minute video called James Trafficant, a tribute. That's Traficant. In the last 6 months of his life, I became good friends with Trafficant. He tells it like it is in that video, and it's a very inspiring 6-minute video. You go and you find James Trafficant a tribute. He was the great congressman from Youngstown, Ohio for many years. They put him in jail for nothing for 7 years to keep him off the street because they didn't want his voice out there. And then last 5 years of his life, he was on just a few major shows on CNN and Fox when he got out of prison in 2009. Greta Van Susteren did one with him, and that's a good one to watch on Google too. And then he was preparing to launch ProjectFreedomUSA.com. Project Freedom USA was the name of the group. There's also a website, and that was to end the IRS and abolish the Fed. And then he died under, I think, completely quizzical and mysterious circumstances on a tractor accident on his farm in September of 2014. But anyway, the Israel Lobby, written by Professors Mearsheimer and I can't remember Professor Walt from Chicago, I think, and Professor Mearsheimer from Harvard or vice versa, wrote the Israel Lobby. A lot of controversy about that a few years ago. So anyway, you can go to a lot of these sources and find that people that know, every congressman knows they better be paying attention to what AIPAC wants them to do, or they'll be targeted. There's the great book and the great video by former Congressman Paul Finley. I don't know if he's still alive or not. He was 86 when he did a YouTube called Paul Finley Dares to Speak Out Again. You can see that, and for 2 hours he explains how every congressman, every city councilman, every senator has Jewish operatives assigned to them who will raise a lot of money for them if they're doing good, but if they're not doing good, then they will defeat them. And Paul Finley in the 80s voted one time. He voted for Israel every time, but one time he voted to withhold aid from them for a while because they were doing these illegal settlements, which really means illegally bulldozing the Palestinians' houses and putting up their own houses. That's the settlements. And Paul Finley did a 2-hour video on that called Paul Finley Dares to Speak Out Again. That's on YouTube. And then his book was called They Dare to Speak Out in the 80s, where he detailed how the people that did speak out against the Jewish lobby were being punished. But he said the book had the exact opposite effect of what he wanted, because then the congressman became more afraid once he put this information out there that they poured a lot of money in against him and defeated him because he voted against them one time. Okay, and that's the way the Israeli lobby works, and that's the way every lobby should work. I give them credit for that. They operate the way every lobby should work. Right to Life is like, oh, we don't care how many times you support pro-abortion candidates or do pro-abortion things, as long as you'll tell us on our questionnaire if you're an incumbent that you're pro-life, we'll go with you pretty much. So that anyway, in that sense, the Israeli lobby does operate the way a lobby should operate, but unfortunately, they're working for the wrong side. So that's the deep state. Okay, now, how long has the deep state or the shadow government been around? Well, big time since 1913, when our Congress stupidly delegated to the Federal Reserve Board, okay, to issue our money. And they've been issuing our money since 1913. That's 105 years now. And the Fed is so powerful that they told Congress, our disgraceful U.S. Congress, in 2012, they told them, we're not going to tell you how much money we're issuing anymore. We're just going to do it in secret, which they've been doing for many years. Okay, so the Congress was so cowardly that if it wasn't for Ron Paul, Congressman Ron Paul of Texas, then he's retired now, and Congressman Grayson of Florida, nobody would have called him on it, but they did call him on it, and Grayson's calling them on it before a congressional committee is hilarious. And then I think he got defeated in the next election. So Paul Finley may not have really lost. Since at least 1988, all of our elections in November, except for one half of New Hampshire, are controlled by 3 companies. This is what the big danger is coming here in this November election. Whether you vote for the Republicans or not, the computers, people running the computer programs, right, can switch the votes inside the computers. Now, let me go on for that for just a little bit. If you heard the commercial they played right before our show went on, I, by a near miracle, caught up with Donald Trump, the candidate, in Marshalltown, Iowa, February 2016. I was able to talk to him for about a minute and hand him a paper while he was signing autographs. He took it, and I said, it's only one page, will you read it? I told him that I was founder of Watch the Vote USA, that we had forced them to change the winner from Romney to Santorum in 2012 Iowa caucus, a first in U.S. political history as far as we know. That story is at you can find that story if you go to jimforamerica.com and scroll down enough. On the homepage, you'll find that story, the Edward True story. And he looked up when I said that I was the founder of Watch the Vote, and we forced them to change the winner. And we talked for about a minute. And I said, this is a one-page paper on how to protect yourself from computer vote fraud. And I said, will you read it? And he said, yes. He reached out and took it. A lot of people around clamoring for autographs, a lot of noise, but we could hear each other. He handed it to his bodyguard that looked like a ex-FBI guy. So I looked at the FBI bodyguard and said, you're about to get on the plane to go to the next rally. It's only one page. Will you give it to him? And the guy gave me kind of a stern nod, yes, like, and don't talk to me again. It was kind of the atmosphere of that guy. But then Trump looked up at me as he was signing an autograph, and he said, how do you think we're doing in Iowa? Typical Trump question. So I got on my best hard guy impersonation, because I'm not a hard guy, but I know Trump deals with hard guys all day. So I put my finger up, and I looked him in the eye, and I pointed at him and said, you're doing well, but you've got to watch the vote so they don't steal it from you. Now, I could be imagining things, but I thought that clicked in his eyes. Something registered, like, yeah, I protect myself in contracts. This is the presidential election. So, and then by another near miracle, somebody on his outer circles, and it was a part of his organization a few years ago, contacted me, and he was running his own organization to support Trump. And he told me that for the next few months, he was in touch with some of Trump's people on this issue. So on August 1st, 2016, Trump started to say, I'm afraid they're going to rig the election against me in almost every rally. And I go on the website, you can find the election night gatekeepers hour tape I did that actually it'll be up there tonight. It isn't up there yet. But it will go into this 20-minute story of all the things that happened then. And this Russian hoax, Greg Jarrett of Fox has that book out, The Russian Hoax, and it's a great book. And Rudy Giuliani himself, Trump's lawyer, is underlining it. The Russian hoax and all this baloney that the Russians had something to do with, this is all made up, was never covered during the election by any network or major paper. They only started saying this after Hillary lost. All that is from Trump bringing this up. And he would say in almost every rally, I'm afraid they're going to rig the election against me. And then on October 26th, in many cities, or several cities at least, the early voting computers were caught by voters who voted for Trump, and when they went to check their ballot, it had switched it to Hillary. Well, most people don't check their ballots, and the programming would usually let them still see Trump, even though it's counting the vote for Hillary. But this happened in Austin, Texas, Maryland, and Colorado, okay, where voters were seeing, I hit Trump on these damnable computer early voting systems with no paper ballots, and then when they went to check their vote, it was Hillary. So Sean Hannity covered that night with Newt Gingrich was the guest. They both said it was terrible. And a few hours later, on October 26, 2016, Trump tweeted out to 17 million people, the early voting computers are switching votes from Trump to Hillary. And when I saw that, I said, finally, somebody has got this out to the nation, that we have problems in computers. And you hear that all the time now. The major companies that have been hacked are ridiculous. Yahoo, you name it. You just say major companies hacked. oh, the computers can't be hacked. But we got a worse problem than the election computers being hacked. It's the three companies that count 99% of our vote that own the programs. They don't have to hack into the election computers. They own the programs. So these three companies, which you've never heard of, unless you've heard of it from me or a few other people on the internet, are ES&S, that's Election System and Services out of Oklahoma, okay? It is Hart Intercivic out of Texas. We use Hart Intercivic in Hamilton County and Cincinnati. It is Dominion, which used to be Diebold. The Diebold election division was bought by Sequoia, by Dominion. Sequoia and Diebold were bought by Dominion around 2014, 2013. So those three companies have been hired by 3,000 plus of our counties, and they count 99% of our vote on their secret programs with the permission of these brain-dead election officials in all the counties and all 50 of our brain-dead secretaries of state. Okay, so they have secret programs that the boards of election agree not to see because it's, quote, proprietary information, quote unquote. Okay, and we're getting near to a break here, so we'll break in just a second when I get the high sign, and then we'll be back after the break. So the point is, these three companies have been hired. Hamilton County here in Ohio hired Hart. 99% of the vote is, and over 3,000 of the 3,141 counties, 3,141 counties has been is hired one of these three companies, which are all the same company. They all have the same rules, and nobody's allowed to look at the software, and they also have wireless access to the modems in these computers. And they can go in and look and change the vote before they tell the local board of elections to print out the results. And then when you go to try to double check, like they did in Alabama and Florida and in Texas recently, the board of elections have destroyed all the ballot images that were counted, and they sometimes destroy all the ballots. So here I think we're going to have our bottom of the hour break and our own ID here. So here we go.
You are listening to
Real News, RealAction.com. The radio show. Paid for by Jim Condit Jr. for Congress.
Insurance companies we represent, and found Ray, who is 41 and takes.
Okay, we're back, and as I was saying before the break, so these three companies, John Eustace, the Ohio Secretary of State, who is trying to do a good job on stopping the retail problem of non-citizens voting, which is happening by the millions. In California and Texas, they have laws that you can vote with a driver's license only, no check on citizenship, and they've prevented the federal government and everyone else under Trump from checking on this. So you got millions of acorns gone underground. That's why the top Democrats in the Democratic Party, Schumer and Pelosi, they're all against ID. And they're what's discriminatory. So they're basically saying minorities are too stupid to get an ID, which is an insult and is reverse racism. But they're against the ID because they want citizens, non-citizens. I mean, they want non-citizens to vote with only their driver's license. And when Trump says there were probably 2 or 3 million of those, probably true. But what there definitely was, in my opinion, was millions of votes were switched from millions of votes were switched from Donald Trump to Hillary inside the computers with the software of ES&S, Hart, and Dominion. Okay. Dominion's located in Canada, and by the way, Roger Stone, who's very credible, no matter what what major media tells you, he's often a guest on some of the major media. He has a friend who was at a party with some of the billionaires in England. One of them was named Brown. You can look up Roger Stone and George Soros election computers. You'll get this. And they told his friend that, hey, we've been business partners with George Soros for years, and we provide 90% of the software to all American election computers. Now, I'd like to see some more sources to prove that's true, but that makes sense. I believe all these three companies are the same company. They're run by the dark side of military intelligence, and they are the deep state. They decided to stand down. They could have easily stolen it from Trump. They got access into the modems. They could have easily stolen it from Trump, but they decided not to on election night at the last minute, in my judgment, because they thought it was going to be too dangerous to pretend that the super dud candidate in all of television history, Hillary Clinton, won. They thought that might bring too much of a backlash, and everybody would be listening to people like me that the elections are easily rigged. Most people believe that anyway now. So, be that as it may, John Eustace, the Ohio Secretary of State, came out on all the cable stations and NBC and ABC and CBS right before the 2016 election and said, no one could ever hack a American presidential election because all the counties, there's 3,141 counties doing it independently. And Eustace, again, is one of the good guys in office. He tries to fight against the vote fraud he understands. But he's approved these systems. Probably was told to because he's a young man who inherited them. But that sounds good. Oh, 3,000 different counties are doing, until you find out that 99% of our 3,141 counties have hired one of these three mega vendors, ES&S, Hart, and Dominion. They run the elections on their secret software. The boards of elections do not run them. They cannot look on them. They'll say, oh, the Republicans are watching the Democrats and the Democrats are watching Republicans. In this sense, nobody's watching anybody. None of them are allowed to look at the computer programs that are telling the computers what to do. And as I say, they take it on blind faith when they print out the results at closing time. And if you try to go get the ballots and the ballot images in an election they fixed, they destroy them. And I'll give you 3 quick examples on that. Laura Presley, Dr. Laura Presley, I say she's Elvis Presley's niece, which is not true, but it helps people remember. She lost in a city council race in Austin, Texas in 2014. She knew she had not lost. They brought in some young atheist at the last minute to run against her in a religious district of city council, and she was going to audit all the books and everything in Austin. So she went down to the Board of Elections a few days later after she got over being stunned, and she said, I want to see the ballot images. Well, they said, we destroyed them, basically. You can't have them. We destroyed them. So she took them to court. At the lower court, they ruled against her and fined her $100,000 for bringing a frivolous suit. Now, you know how frivolous it is to want to see the ballots or the ballot images after an election to double-check the results. So then she's got it before the Texas Supreme Court. The Attorney General has come in on her side on at least one issue. This is one of the most important cases in the country. We're trying to get Congresswoman Marsha Blackburn, can't reach her, or the Freedom Caucus, Jim Jordan, Meadows, Gohmert, Massey, those folks in Congress, to bring this up and make her a national celebrity so that the Texas Supreme Court can't mug her in the dark. In Alabama, the Judge Roy Moore, Doug Jones race, when actually it was more of the liberals that went in to try to look at the ballot images. On the international news, the Supreme Court of Alabama said a few days before the election, no, we give the Secretary of State of Alabama, who's another conservative Republican and wanted to destroy him, we give him permission to destroy the ballots. And they've either destroyed them or withheld the ballot images. They've withheld those ballot images since then. The ballot images are what is counted. And according to Dr. Laura Presley and other experts, you can't you can't alter the ballot images or it's too obvious. So they have to destroy them when they've cheated. They have to destroy the ballot images. If anybody looks at them and compares them against the election, the results, they would find that they had either cheated or directly or altered the ballots. Finally, Debbie Wasserman Schultz, 2016 Democratic primary. She was very unpopular because she had weighted things for Hillary up at the National Democratic headquarters. Donna Brazile wrote the book about this, right? And Debbie Wasserman Schultz won, and Professor Tim Canova, who was kind of a Bernie Sanders guy, was running against her, had a very clean reputation. And his people said, boy, everybody out in the neighborhoods that we walked seemed to be fed up with Debbie Wasserman Schultz. So they said, would like to see the ballot images in Broward County down in Florida, near Miami, Florida. And Broward County Board of Elections said, we destroyed the ballot images. But don't worry, we have the ballots. So they took them to court, and when they got into court after a few months, they came into court and said, oh, we destroyed the ballots too. Now, this is against federal law. Federal law, which we produce on watchthevoteusa.com and elsewhere, Federal, and you can find it all at jimforamerica.com. Everything I'm talking about, you go to jimforamerica.com, scroll down the homepage, and you'll find it. It's federal law that it is a felony to destroy ballots before 22 months are up, 22 months after each election. If you and I destroyed one ballot at our local where we vote, we would go to jail for a while. Well, the judge in Florida bawled him out and said you shouldn't have done that, but didn't give any penalty. And that's not this has been going on for 30 years, since the end of Ronald Reagan at least, the whole country, except for half of New Hampshire. These judges are criminals and they protect these people. I say a lot of these judges have the wisdom of Solomon if they're doing a car wreck between a middle-class white person and another middle-class white person, or a guy who's broken his restraining order and wasn't supposed to see his girlfriend. I've been sitting there in court. They have the wisdom of Solomon dealing with these people. But you get in a case that affects the shadow government, which is from the local all the way up to the national level, you get in a case like that, they are crooked as they can be, and most judges that have heard political cases, including the entire Supreme Court of Alabama on this one, belong in prison. Okay, we need to, the Constitution is weak on that. We need to make it easier to bring judges to a jury trial when they break people's rights, because now they do it right and left with impunity. The judge in Jim Traficant's case forbid him to enter any evidence before the jury. Same with Joe Arpaio, the sheriff out in Arizona who was convicted of some felony and they wouldn't let him bring his evidence in. This is the way a lot of these judges belong in jail. Okay, so you see, I hope I've made the point why we got to get the Trump again to bring up the easily rigged election systems, demand an open count, paper ballots counted at the precinct before the ballots leave the public site. We need paper ballots counted at the precinct by human beings before the ballots leave public site. You'd probably need about 12 people at each precinct. You'd pay them each $100 for 4 hours work. They'd process about 50 ballots each. And then you would know, as far as you can know, you could film what they're doing from on the ceiling. If we wanted to do this right, it's got to be like a military operation to make sure we get a fair count. And then these phony polls. You remember they put out phony polls for a year before the Trump-Hillary election? Trump cannot win. Hillary is ahead by 10 points. These are lying, phony polls put out by the 5 Jewish owners. Again, we're not criticizing all Jews. The Jewish crime syndicate. Jews that own ABC, CBS, NBC, CNN, and Fox, and you can find that on our website. It's on their websites. If one faction, if the Muslims ran all 5 stations, or if Nazis ran all, or white nationalists ran all 5 stations, would you want to know? Would that be important? Well, I'm sorry to tell you, it's what most of you are brainwashed. Many people are brainwashed not to accept. It's the organized Jewish network that owns all 5 of our TV stations and the New York Times and controls the Washington Post and all the wire and both wire services. So that is why you haven't heard of any of this over the major media. And I won't go into it now because I got to get to other things. But the 5 TV networks are in the computer vote fraud up to their necks, and all of the phony projections for the last 30 years of, oh, George Bush is going to win in Maryland, or Al Gore is going to win in California. These are phony competition. They all get the same phony exit poll information from the same company called National Election Pool, which you can look up on the internet. National Election Pool. Same information of these phony exit polls, because it's impossible to do accurate exit polls. I won't go into that now, because most people won't talk to them, and they admit it. And they get the same information from the same company, National Election Pool, which they jointly own or jointly control. So there's more to that, but I won't go into that now. I want to go into some other things in the last 15 minutes here that that need to be covered. And that if you go to jimforamerica.com, which I got to say, for the first time before I went on the show, I'm really proud of what we got up there. And one of our websites also is openlettertodonaldtrump.com. And the first article on that homepage, pinned to the homepage, is Donald Trump, open letter to donaldtrump.com, and it says, President Trump must bring up computer fraud. Everyone should read that article. But if anybody out there knows Eric or Don Jr. or Maloney or Kellyanne Conway, somebody around President Trump, please tell them to have Trump look at that one article. It's got 7 little audios in it to further elaborate, and it tells you everything you need to know about the dangers we are always in of massive computer vote fraud till we kick these companies out, count the votes by hand, and then you can make ballot images of the ballots. You can film what they're doing and stream it over the internet at every precinct. Then we would have verifiable elections. All this is at watchthevoteusa.com, and the first two links on the homepage. One is the report, watchthevoteusa.com, sent to the Presidential Election Commission before Trump ended it and sent it to the White House, and they're here, there, and everywhere that we could. And the other one is a press release we put out with a proposed executive order that President Trump could do right away. And that's in that one is where John Brakey, a great vote fraud investigator, got proof that in Rhode Island they not only have modems in there that the ES&S can access from wireless technology, cell phone, satellite technology, just like we call each other on a cell phone. It's wireless technology. They also have PC Anywhere in these computers that he found, which is like a go to my PC where you can see everything that's happening in the computer, get in there and change the numbers. Changing the numbers in an election for them is as easy as changing a typo in a Word document. So when he confronted ES&S with this, that they had PC Anywhere and wireless modems in there that they could communicate with during the election day, they said, well, the other two do it too. The other two major vendors do it too. Now, any young person listening to this should be jumping, I'm sure they're jumping out of their chair because they understand how easy it is to hack stuff, right? But people my age, I just turned 65. I don't feel a day over 87 though, but I just turned 65, and those of us who are older a lot of times looked at computers as magic, but I think everybody's getting the idea that these computers can be hacked. Okay, so you got that. Okay, then we got in Open Letter to Donald Trump the tab called New Open Letter 2018. It hits on 5 issues. The first is the vote fraud, the computer vote fraud. The second is how we overthrow the deep state's agents in Congress, like Mitch McConnell, Paul Ryan, and the Democrats too. Trump should set up 10 phones at his 2020 election headquarters that answer the phone, doing nothing but help normal citizens like you and me run for their neighborhood precinct captain position. There's 50 states, 3,141 counties, approximately 250,000 precincts. So the county you live in is divided up into little territories called precincts. And that's where you vote. That's where your polling place is, or near there. And if they've combined some polling places. So everybody, like in 5 signatures in Ohio, getting 5 signatures, you can run for Democrat or Republican precinct captain. And the Democrats and Republicans control all 50 states and every county in the United States. So you do that. You go to the county party organizational meeting. Both the Republicans and Democrats hold an organizational meeting every 2 years in their county. You probably never heard of this because this is where we're losing the country. You write them letters and they throw them out. You go to rallies and scream and you go home and they continue. You go to these county meetings and elect a good constitutional chairman of your party and an executive board, and now they can endorse candidates who are good candidates and get rid of all the rhinos in the Republican Party and get rid of all the Democrats. Trump should tell people, almost all the Democrats, Trump should tell people to go into the Republican or Democratic Party of their choice, Trump supporters, and take over these parties at the precinct level. They would be freaking in the darkness at the top of the world in the Waldorf Astoria if Trump did this. But I've been trying it for 30 years, but don't have a big enough voice to do it. Censored by the media. When they don't give me any free interviews, I got to pay to get on air like this. So then that number 3, the issue is issuing money. How we issue money. Tucker Carlson, Rocky Boyman here in Cincinnati at WLW, the former great NFL star with 2 Super Bowl rings. He's done shows on it. CNN has, MSNBC. What are we going to do? The robots are coming. Computers or robots are taking all of the jobs out there. What are we going to do? And they never have an answer. Well, we have the answer. And it's at our website, thisageofplenty.com. We report on the people that solved the problem at the beginning of the machine age. See, once Henry Ford got mass production proved and everybody started copying mass production, then the computers, now the robots that are doing putting together cars, they say they're going to be making food at McDonald's within a few years. excuse me, the robot's coming, and more people, there's not going to be the good paying jobs. So we need a system called the National Dividend. And it is issuing money scientifically based on the goods and services that are available. We have about a $7 trillion gap, $7 trillion of cash that is not in the pockets of the people at the everyday level. We need that cash in the pockets of the people. That's what has to happen. So it's linked on jimforamerica.com, and there's a money section. The website is thisageofplenty.com, thisageofplenty.com. One page, 24 questions and answers. That's the system that Trump must, if Trump would inaugurate that system and stop the secrecy of the Fed and replace it with something that issues money in the open on a scientific basis, he would go down as one of the greatest leaders in history. For the next 1,000 years, he would be called one of the greatest leaders in history, because some leaders somewhere got to move from the guaranteed failure system we're in, which is vulture capitalism. Okay, there's vulture capitalism. That's bad. Pat Buchanan and Pope Pius XI in 1931 condemned vulture capitalism, not in those words, but vulture capitalism as all the wealth going up to the 1%, and then that leads to socialism and communism. Because people are now ready to hear the socialist message, like Bernie Sanders, like this Cortez young gal out of New York City. Sounds good when you're strangling and you're in debt and things aren't working right in the economy. So the answer is the middle of the road free enterprise capitalism, and that's what we explained. The system was called social credit back then, like we all deserve a part of our heritage, right? But social credit, by the time I say that, you think I'm going to say socialism. So we're not calling it that. We're calling it the National Dividend. And that is the answer to preserve free enterprise capitalism on a level playing field as the Founding Fathers envisioned. Okay? Pat Buchanan condemned vulture capitalism in 1996 when he was running for president for the GOP nomination. And the next day, Charles Krauthammer condemned him. Oh, don't use that. That's a bad word. They want you to think there's only vulture monopoly capitalism, like the Jewish network in New York is pulling on us right now and strangling the whole country compared to where we could be, and socialism. Well, there's a third way. There's the real way, the Founding Fathers way, a way approved by the true popes like Pope Pius XI, free enterprise capitalism on an even playing field. So I could go on and on about that, but we'll do that. We'll probably do a whole show, at least half on money, in the next, 9 weeks. So you want to mark your calendars, or at least go into jimforamerica.com and find the recordings of these shows, and tell all your friends and relatives that have any interest, all your contacts around the country by email, any interest in what's going on. They have to come here. There's no other place. I mean, I don't want to sound like my ego is going to explode, but for the last 40 years, I've been looking into what's really going on in the country. While you've been doing what you're doing, Trump's been doing what he's doing, and believe me, Trump needs to hear these 5 points. So it was get rid of the computer vote fraud, have people run for precincts and replace the party leaders in all the counties in the Democrat and Republican Party, and nominate new constitutional congressmen who can undo all the bad stuff, keep the good stuff. Number 3 is issue money properly. Number 4 is false flags. Now, we'll do a whole thing on this. False flag. We're afraid President Trump is going to be fooled by a false flag violent incident into starting a war. He said he wouldn't start any new wars. But what they do is, and Tucker Carlson covered this on his show, I believe it was July 24th, with the best military man that comes on TV as a guest, retired Colonel Douglas McGregor. So if you go for Tucker Carlson, Douglas McGregor, maybe Gulf of Tonkin he mentioned. And he said the Gulf of Tonkin that got us into the Vietnam War, okay, did not happen. Everybody knows it didn't happen now. It was a fake incident, and that's what Johnson used to escalate our people into the Vietnam War, our soldiers. So he said, I'm afraid that the deep state is going to pull a false flag in the Mideast, like attack one of our ships. That would be, again, the dark side of the United States intelligence and the dark side of the Mossad, Israel's intelligence agency, which is a bad organization in general. Their slogan is rule by way of deception, okay? So by way of deception. So and a lot of these things we've seen, 9/11 is a false flag. Sorry if you haven't caught up with that, or you're depending on the people on Fox. You've got to look at our site, Behind the Curtain. We got some excellent videos up there by Christopher Boleyn. Okay, So that's number 4. We got to be aware that most of these shootings in Las Vegas, these are false flags done by the dark side of military intelligence, and then they kill somebody like that poor guy out in Las Vegas, throw him on the floor and say he did it, and the story falls apart. Almost all these shootings, not all, but almost all have been false flags. Finally, the Greater Israel Project, we got number 5, and this is why people are afraid to be photographed with me. I'm not allowed on any show as a guest here locally or nationally, except a few small towns that have an AM station. I just did one out west the other day on one of those AM stations. But is because the Greater Israel Project, look it up, is Netanyahu Likud faction in Israel wanting to expand Israel's borders. And we got to support the Jewish leaders that are not for doing that, because if they go with the Greater Israel Project, it means constant war in the Middle East for the next endless years. And I don't even know if Trump is aware of this. The Greater Israel Project, just go down jimforamerica.com and you'll find that, okay? You'll find that on there. So I think we're going to go to the music to end the show any minute here. Okay, it's going to be soon. And I would like to, I don't know if I can succeed in pressing record here. Just give me a second. I'm trying to do one experiment here on the air, and I got to get my glasses on. Here comes our music. Just hold on for 1 second while I try to do this experiment. There we go. There we go. Boom. Okay, so we're going to be on here in the next, we're going to be on here in the next 9 weeks, next Sundays at 10 p.m. Eastern. People can listen all over the country on 55krc.com or get the iHeartRadio app for free on your phone or computer and push W55KRC, because that iHeart app works great. And consider, I'm asking 300 people in the next month from anywhere in the country, as long as you're a U.S. citizen, to donate $100 so we can saturate the Midwest with the ads like you will hear on the website and like they played at the beginning of the hour, trying to get to Trump, to have him again, telling people in the listening audience to get to Trump if they can, or somebody around him, and have him bring up this computer vote fraud and say they're afraid they're going to steal the congressional elections away from him, right? So please go to donate button at the right-hand column of jimforamerica.com. That's jimforamerica.com. Anything is appreciated. I'd like 300 people to donate $100. We can really get the job done then. And or 30 people $1,000, or 6 rich couples, a husband and a wife, can each do $2,500. 6 times 5,000, 30,000. We need to saturate the airwaves. So please consider, finally, you can, from your own computer at home, be part of changing America if you help us make this issue get it in everyone's mind, okay? So we're getting near the end of the show here. I got to grab something. Okay. When you're an old man, you grunt when you lean over. Okay, so I'm going to read a quote here that applies to our time. We're getting near the end of the time here. Once to every man and nation, this is James Russell Lowe, wrote a poem in 1845, but it applies to our time. Once to every man and nation comes the moment to decide, in the strife of truth with falsehood, for the good or evil side. And that choice goes down forever between the darkness and the light. Though the cause of evil prosper, yet the truth alone is strong. Though right beyond the scaffold, though wrong beyond the throne, but that scaffold sways the future, and behind the shadows in the dim unknown standeth God, keeping watch upon his own. Now in the last minute or 30 seconds here, I want to say we're not going to win without the spiritual side of this. I urge everyone to go to Father Gruner's video, Heaven's Key to Peace, on the internet. Watch the first 30 minutes, what happened, the visions of Our Lady Mary at Fatima by the 3 Fatima children. And Catholics need to pray the rosary. Catholic means universal. Catholics need to pray the rosary every day. Protestants say the prayers that you think are most effective, and other religions say the prayers for our country that you think is most effective. See you next Sunday. JimForAmerica.com. This is Jim Condit Jr. for Congress.